I and my husband Jake are at a complete impasse about me returning to work, and I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. We've been married for 8 years, together for 10, and have 2 kids. Some background. I used to work as a healthcare administrator at a large hospital network. I genuinely loved my job, the people, the work, the sense of accomplishment. Everything about it gave me purpose. When our youngest was born with a heart condition that required intensive care and monitoring, Jake and I made the decision together that I would temporarily step away from my career to be a full-time mom. Our agreement was that I'd stay home until our youngest turned 2 and got medical clearance. Jake works in emergency services with this schedule, which pays really well, but makes childcare tricky, especially with a medically vulnerable kid. The plan always was that once our youngest hit those milestones, I'd jump back into my career. Fast forward to 3 weeks ago, our little guy got the all clear from his cardiologist, and I was over the moon. The very next day, my former supervisor called with a job offer. Not just any job, a flexible position that would let me use my experience while accommodating our family situation. Basically, my dream return to work scenario. I was so excited when I told Jake at dinner that evening. I thought he'd be happy for me since this was exactly what we had planned for 2 years ago, but instead, his whole face just changed. He put down his fork and asked, "Who's gonna watch the kids during my shifts?" I was completely thrown off. We had researched childcare centers together months ago. We'd even toured a few. I reminded him of our agreement, but he shook his head and said he thought that was just talk, and that the reality of having 2 young kids meant our original plan didn't make sense anymore. The conversation went downhill fast from there. Jake started listing all his sacrifices, the long shifts, the stress of being the sole provider, missing social events due to work. When I pointed out that I had also sacrificed my entire career, he dismissed it completely. Then came the comment that honestly still has me reeling. He said his job was actually important because he saves lives while I just worked in an office pushing papers. In 8 years of marriage, he has never spoken about my career that way. I've always been supportive of his work, and I thought he respected mine too. Then he dropped another bomb, saying he couldn't possibly deal with the kids during his time off because he needed to recover from his demanding shifts. The argument peaked when he told me that if I really cared about our family, I would understand that my place was at home until the children were much older, possibly in school full-time. After putting the kids to bed that night, I tried to have a calmer conversation. I asked him point blank when he had changed his mind about our agreement. His response: "Things change when you actually have kids," as if I wasn't right there in the trenches with him every single day for the past 4 years. I spent that entire night replaying so many small moments that suddenly looked different in this new light. His resistance whenever I suggested hiring help even when we could afford it. His complaints when I attended the occasional professional networking event to keep my contacts fresh. His frequent comments about how his income supported our lifestyle. The next morning, while Jake was sleeping, I called my supervisor back and expressed interest in the position. I realized that regaining my financial independence might be more urgent than I previously thought. Here's where it gets even messier. When I mentioned to Jake that I wanted to review our finances to make sure my return to work made economic sense, he got super defensive. After some back and forth, he finally admitted he'd been making large payments toward his parents' mortgage and funding his brother's startup business, without ever discussing these decisions with me. These aren't small amounts either. We're talking thousands of dollars every month that could have been going toward our children's future or our retirement. I'm supposed to start recertification next week if I want this job, and Jake is now making me feel like I'm choosing my career over our family. But that's not it at all. I love our kids more than anything, but I also need something for myself, for my identity beyond being mom. Last night, I created a separate email account and started researching childcare options independently. I feel like I'm sneaking around in my own marriage, but Jake is being so unreasonable about this that I don't see another choice. I don't even know what I'm asking here. Am I crazy for wanting to stick to our original plan? Every fiber of my being is telling me that regaining my financial independence is the right move, especially after discovering those secret financial decisions. But Jake is making me feel like I'm abandoning our family. Thanks for reading this novel of a post. Has anyone else dealt with a partner completely changing the terms of your agreement about work parenting? I feel completely blindsided and don't know if I'm overreacting about all of this. Now for the first update. Update. First of all, thank you all so much for the overwhelming support on my last post. Seriously, I was not expecting that kind of response. I've read every single comment and taken all your advice to heart as I navigate this situation with Jake. It's been 2 weeks since that massive argument with Jake about me returning to work, and honestly, things haven't improved much. He's been going back and forth between apologizing for his tone during our fight, while still insisting that me going back to work doesn't make sense for our family right now. After he realized I was serious about taking the job, he completely switched tactic. Now he's framing it as I don't need, since we're financially comfortable enough. The weirdest part is that despite our surprisingly minimal savings, this discovery came when I asked to review our finances together to make sure my return to work made economic sense. Jake got super defensive right away, which was a major red flag. When I finally convinced him to let me see our accounts, I was shocked to learn exactly where our money has been going. Those payments to his parents, mortgage, and his brother's startup weren't just occasional generous gifts, they're huge monthly commitments that have been draining our savings for years. We're talking thousands of dollars every month that should have been going toward our children's future or our retirement. The timing of all this is pretty critical since the job requires me to complete recertification within the next month. If I want this position, which I absolutely do, I needed to start immediately. For those asking in the comments, yes, this is the flexible position my old supervisor offered that would work perfectly with our family schedule. Yesterday, I had a meeting scheduled with my former supervisor to discuss logistics of returning to work. This meant Jake had to watch our kids for 3 hours, something he rarely does alone, especially with our youngest. Walking into my former workplace felt amazing. I immediately felt a confidence I hadn't realized I'd been missing for the past 2 years. I was mid-conversation with my supervisor when my phone started buzzing with text messages from Jake. The first one seemed innocent enough. The little one is acting up. Then, I think he might have a fever. Then, how much longer will you be? I can't handle this all day. Sound familiar to anyone else who's left their kids with their partner for a whopping 3 hours? My supervisor noticed I was distracted and asked if everything was all right. When I briefly explained what was happening, her expression changed from concern to understanding. She revealed that her own husband had pulled similar stunts when she returned to work after their children were born, suddenly making childcare seem impossibly overwhelming whenever she wasn't home. I can't tell you how validating it was to hear I wasn't the only one dealing with this. Shout out to the commenters who shared similar experiences. You helped me feel less crazy. The meeting continued, but was interrupted by a call from Jake. He sounded frustrated and completely overwhelmed, insisting our youngest was sick and I needed to come home immediately. I asked specific questions about symptoms and when the fever started, but he gave vague answers. Then I heard our son's voice clearly in the background asking to watch TV, sounding perfectly fine. I'm sure you can all guess where this is going. I kept my composure and told Jake I'd be home after my meeting as planned. Then I turned my phone to silent and refocused on the opportunity in front of me, a position with flexibility, good pay, and a chance to rebuild my professional identity. My supervisor was incredibly understanding about the whole situation. Seriously, what a blessing to have supportive women in leadership positions. When I got home, I found both kids contentedly watching television with zero signs of illness. Jake was just sitting there scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging my arrival. Then he had the audacity to ask if I'd gotten this work thing out of my system now. That night, after the kids were asleep, I created a separate email account and began researching childcare options independently. To answer common questions from my last post: 1. Yes, I'm still pursuing this job 100%. 2. No, I haven't confronted him about his attempts to sabotage me. 3. Yes, I'm documenting everything. I'm starting to realize that Jake's resistance isn't just about logistics or even money. It's about maintaining control over our family dynamic. Looking back at the past 2 years, I can see how I gradually lost my independence without even realizing it. First financial, then social, and finally my professional identity. Jake has been subtly reinforcing my dependence on him while simultaneously devaluing my contributions to our family. Several commenters called this financial abuse, which was hard to read at first, but I'm starting to see the pattern. I should clarify something from my last post that many people asked about. Jake's schedule is 48 hours on, 96 hours off as an emergency services worker. This means he works 2 full days straight, then has 4 days off. Even with this schedule, he's been acting like watching our kids during any portion of his time off is an unreasonable burden. Meanwhile, I've been on duty 24/7 for 2 years straight with no complaints. The double standard is honestly infuriating now that I see it clearly. What's really opened my eyes through all of this is how different Jake acts now compared to before we had kids. We used to be equal partners who supported each other's dreams and ambitions. Somewhere along the way, he decided my career was optional while his was essential. Thanks to everyone who pointed out that his saving lives comment was manipulative and designed to make my work seem less important. The child care center I've been researching has experience with children who have medical histories similar to our youngest's. They have a nurse on staff and excellent safety protocols. I've scheduled a tour for next week while Jake is on shift. Edit for clarity. Our youngest has been medically cleared by his cardiologist. His heart condition is stable and no longer requires intensive monitoring. I'm supposed to start recertification next week, and I've decided I'm going forward with it, regardless of Jake's opinion. Some of you suggested getting separate accounts, which I'm seriously considering now that I've seen how he's been managing our finances. The most hurtful part of all this is realizing that Jake doesn't see me as an equal partner anymore. He views my desire to return to work as selfish rather than as the fulfillment of our agreement. When did providing financially for our family become solely his domain and decision? I'm not sure what happens next, but I know I'm taking this job. Our children deserve to see their mother fulfilled and valued, not just as a caretaker, but as a whole person with ambitions and skills. Thank you all for reminding me of this. Your support has given me strength I didn't know I had. As for Jake, I guess we'll see how he handles my determination. Part of me hopes he'll remember the man I married who supported my career, but the other part is preparing for more resistance. Either way, I'm done letting someone else define my worth or my future. This journey is far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm taking back control of my life. I'll update again after I start recertification and see how Jake responds to the reality that this is happening, whether he likes it or not. Now for the second update, Update 2. Well, it's been 3 weeks since my last post. Thanks for all the support, Bud W. I've read every comment. I'm still processing everything that's happened, but I promised an update, so here it is. So I accepted the job offer, starting in 2 weeks, and completed my recertification as planned. You guys were right. Jake has not taken this well. At all. The tension at home has been very high. What's even more frustrating is that Jake has now decided to involve his parents and our mutual friends in what he's calling the childcare situation, as if this is just about childcare and not about our entire relationship dynamic. Last week, I got a call from Jake's mother. I usually get along well with her, but this conversation was different. She went on about how concerned she was about the children being raised by strangers, and that no job is worth sacrificing your children's well-being. The way she phrased everything sounded rehearsed and eerily similar to Jake's exact arguments. It was pretty obvious he had put her up to this call. Thanks to everyone who warned me this might happen. You called it. What's worse is that I've discovered Jake has been selectively sharing information with our social circle. He's been emphasizing our younger child's previous heart condition without mentioning that doctors have completely cleared him. He's basically created this narrative where I'm abandoning a medically fragile child for my selfish career ambitions, which is absolute BS and frustrates me just typing it. Meanwhile, I'm moving forward. I finished my recertification. It felt amazing to use my brain for something other than managing household logistics, and finalized arrangements with a great childcare center that has experience with kids who have medical histories similar to our youngest. The director even showed me their emergency protocols and introduced me to staff members who have specialized training. It's probably better care than what our son would get at home with either of us, honestly. Last night, things escalated in a very public way. We were invited to dinner with Matt and Sarah, close friends we've known since before having kids. They've always maintained a balanced approach to careers and parenting. Sarah went back to work when their kids were babies, and they've turned out perfectly fine. Throughout the car ride, I noticed Jake constantly on his phone, texting. When I asked who he was talking to, he just dismissed me with, "It's just work stuff." Spoiler alert, it wasn't work stuff. We get to the restaurant and everything seems normal at first. Then Matt asks about my new job. And before I can even answer, Jake interrupts with, "That's actually something we're still discussing as a family." The table went completely silent. I was stunned for a second before I directly contradicted him, explaining that I had already accepted the position and would be starting in 2 weeks, just as we had planned years ago. Jake set his drink down. He said that I was putting my career ahead of what's best for the kids. It became painfully obvious he had already shared his version of the situation with our friends before dinner, which explained all the texting in the car. Sarah tried to diffuse the tension by mentioning that she returned to work when their children were even younger than ours, and they had managed just fine with quality childcare. Jake's response was to dismiss her experience completely, saying her job wasn't as demanding as his, and that someone needs to be the responsible parent. The irony of him saying this when he can barely handle 3 hours alone with our kids is not lost on me. I kept my composure somehow, though inside I was seething, and explained to our friends the reality of our financial situation and reminded them of the agreement Jake and I had made about my return to work. The rest of dinner was awkward to say the least. The car ride home was quiet until Jake finally accused me of embarrassing him in front of our friends. I told him I was simply correcting his mischaracterization of our situation. I wasn't going to let him present it as if I'm the selfish career woman abandoning my family. Side note, isn't it interesting how women are expected to sacrifice careers for family without question, but when men prioritize work, they're just providing? Later that night, while Jake was in the shower, his phone kept receiving notifications. I know snooping isn't great, and many of you advised against it in comments, but given everything that's happened, I glanced at his screen. He was in a conversation with his brother about transferring funds from our joint savings account. I immediately checked our online banking and discovered Jake had moved a significant portion of our savings to an account in only his name. He left our joint account with barely enough to cover next month's mortgage payment. For those keeping score at home, gaslighting, manipulation, and now financial control tactics. Bingo card almost complete. This discovery removed any lingering doubts I had about whether I was overreacting. First thing this morning, I scheduled an appointment with a financial advisor for tomorrow. I realize now that my financial independence isn't just about professional fulfillment, it's potentially about my family's security. I'm trying to process all of this rationally. On one hand, I want to confront Jake immediately about the money transfer. On the other hand, part of me thinks I should wait until after I've met with the financial advisor so I have a clearer picture of our situation and my options. And yes, before anyone suggests it, I've started documenting everything. The most painful realization through all of this is seeing how Jake views our partnership. Somewhere along the line, he stopped seeing me as an equal and started viewing me as someone he has authority over. I keep thinking about how different things were before kids, how we supported each other's goals and made decisions together. I miss that version of us, but I'm increasingly unsure if that relationship still exists or if it can be salvaged. I'm starting my job in 2 weeks regardless of Jake's attempts to sabotage it. I've already arranged for my paychecks to be deposited into a new account he doesn't have access to, thanks to all who suggested this in my last post. I'm taking this one day at a time, but I'm prepared for challenges ahead before things improve. Thank you all again for the support and advice. It really has been a lifeline during this crazy time. Reading your comments and seeing that I'm not overreacting or being selfish has given me the confidence to stand my ground. I'll update again after meeting with the financial advisor and starting my job. Just got off a quick call with Sarah. She apologized for the dinner awkwardness and revealed that Jake had told them I was struggling with the idea of leaving our son given his health issues. She was shocked to learn our son had been medically cleared months ago. Apparently, Jake has been sharing a misleading story to our entire social circle. She's promised to correct the record with other friends. Now for the final update. Final update on my husband trying to stop me from returning to work after we agreed I would. Wow, can't believe we're at the end of this saga already. First of all, thank you so much to everyone who's been following along and offering advice. Your support has genuinely kept me sane through this whole ordeal. It's been just over a week since my last update, and honestly, I'm still processing everything that's happened. Remember how I mentioned I was going to meet with a financial advisor after discovering Jake had transferred a chunk of our savings to his personal account? Well, that meeting was not good. The financial advisor helped me get a clear picture of our finances, and let's just say Jake's portrayal of our situation was wildly inaccurate. Despite his comments about being the responsible provider, we were significantly less financially secure than he'd led me to believe. For the past 2 years, while I was focused on our kids, Jake had been steadily increasing his spending on his family members and his hobbies. We appeared prosperous on the surface with our nice house and 2 cars, but we had almost no safety net despite our combined income when I was working. After the meeting, I immediately opened my own bank account and arranged for my upcoming paychecks to be deposited there rather than to our joint account. It felt like such a small thing, practically speaking, but emotionally, it was a significant step toward reclaiming my independence. I spent the weekend preparing the kids for the transition to their new childcare arrangement, explaining in simple terms that mommy was going back to work just like daddy works. They seemed excited about the school they'd be attending, especially after we visited again on Friday and they got to see some of the toys there. My eldest even asked when he could go back, which was reassuring. Sunday night was supposed to be just a normal family dinner before my first day back at work. I made everyone's favorites, trying to keep things positive despite the tension that had been building, and we were all seated around the table when Jake made an announcement. "I've been approved for a transfer to Station 41, he announced, as if commenting on the weather. "It comes with a promotion to lieutenant. We'll need to move within the next month." I nearly choked on my food. Station 41 was in Lakewood, a city 3 hours away from where we currently live. I stared at him in disbelief as he continued explaining all the benefits of this move. A larger house, better schools, being closer to his parents, while completely ignoring the fact that I was starting my new job the next day. When I finally found my voice to ask when he had applied for this transfer, Jake mentioned it was a couple months ago. Precisely when I first brought up returning to work, this wasn't spontaneous. He'd been planning this disruption all along. The look of genuine surprise on his face, when I didn't immediately agree that this was good news, was almost comical. He honestly seemed to expect me to just nod and start packing. "Why would you make such a significant decision affecting our entire family without even mentioning it to me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady for the kids' sake. What followed was an argument that felt strangely calm on my end, probably because I was having one of those clarity moments where everything suddenly makes perfect sense. Jake insisted this was a career opportunity he can't pass up, the exact words I had used about my own job offer, and that as the primary provider, his career naturally takes priority. I pointed out the pattern that had become clear to me: his unilateral financial decisions, his attempts to disrupt my childcare arrangements, and now this transfer application, all designed to maintain control and keep me financially dependent. It was like I could finally see the whole picture after only glimpsing pieces for years. Jake's demeanor shifted between defensive anger and attempts at manipulation throughout our conversation. One minute he was suggesting I was being selfish for not supporting his career advancement. The next he was saying we could start fresh in the new location and I wouldn't need to work at all. After dinner, I put the kids to bed, their usual routine, thankfully unaffected by the tension between their parents. When I came back downstairs, Jake had his laptop open at the dining table, displaying a family budget he had prepared in advance. According to his calculations, we couldn't afford childcare, and my returning to work would actually cost us money, though his calculations included continued payments to his family members as non-negotiable expenses. I didn't argue with his numbers. Instead, I calmly handed him the folder I'd prepared after meeting with the financial advisor. It contained my own financial analysis, childcare arrangements, and a proposed family budget that prioritized our nuclear family's security. I told him simply that my decision was made. I was starting work tomorrow as planned, and he could either adjust to our original agreement of partnership or we would need to reconsider our arrangement entirely. He stared at me for a long moment, clearly not expecting this level of preparation and resolve. Finally, he said he needed to think about things and went to sleep in the guest room, which was fine by me. I needed space to mentally prepare for my first day back. The next morning was surreal. I got up early, dressed in my professional clothes for the first time in 2 years, and got the kids ready for their first day at the childcare center. Jake was absent. He'd left for his shift without saying goodbye. I tried not to let it bother me as I dropped the kids off and headed to my first day back at work. Walking into that office felt right. My supervisor greeted me warmly. My old colleagues had prepared a small welcome-back breakfast, and I spent the day remembering just how much I enjoyed the challenges of my work. For those 8 hours, I wasn't just a mom. I was a professional with valuable skills and knowledge. I picked up the kids and headed home, half expecting another confrontation with Jake. Instead, I found a note saying he'd taken an extra shift and wouldn't be home until morning. This continued for 3 days, Jake avoiding me by manipulating his schedule to be home only when I was at work or asleep. On the 4th day, I received a call from Sarah. She asked if I had time for coffee that afternoon and mentioned she had something important to discuss. I arranged to meet her during my lunch break, curious but wary about what this might be about. Sarah looked uncomfortable as I sat down across from her. She pushed a folder toward me. Inside were printouts of text messages between Jake and her husband Matt. Apparently, Jake had been asking Matt for information about divorce attorneys and discussing strategies for protecting his assets. The texts revealed his plan to use the promotion and transfer as leverage, believing I would either have to quit my new job to follow him or stay behind and manage without his income. I felt calm reading through those messages. Sarah apologized for the awkwardness, but said she couldn't keep this from me after seeing how Jake had been manipulating situations. Matt had no idea she was showing me these, but she felt I deserved to know what I was dealing with. I thanked her, finished my coffee, and went straight to the bank. With the evidence of Jake's intentions, I withdrew half of what remained in our joint accounts and transferred it to my new personal account, documenting everything meticulously. Then I called a lawyer recommended by my financial advisor and scheduled an appointment for the following day. By the time Jake finally came home that evening, I was ready. I didn't yell or cry. I simply handed him copies of his own text messages to Matt and informed him that I had consulted with an attorney about our options moving forward. "You can take the promotion and transfer if that's what you want," I told him. "But the kids and I won't be joining you. I've already spoken with a lawyer about custody arrangements that would work with your schedule." The look on Jake's face was something I'll never forget, shock giving way to the realization that his plan had completely backfired. He started to argue, then to bargain, then to apologize, cycling through tactics as he realized none of them were working. I simply repeated that I was open to discussing fair arrangements for the children, but I would not be giving up my job or my independence again. 2 weeks have passed since that conversation. Jake declined the transfer and has been sleeping in the guest room while we navigate this new reality. We're scheduled to begin mediation next week to discuss separation terms and custody arrangements. Surprisingly, he's been relatively reasonable so far. The kids are thriving in their new childcare situation, and I'm rediscovering my professional confidence with every passing day at work. My supervisor has been incredibly supportive, even adjusting my schedule slightly to accommodate custody exchanges on Jake's working days. I don't know what the future holds for us as a family, but I do know I won't be sacrificing my independence again. The financial advisor helped me create a solid plan for supporting myself and the children, even if Jake and I ultimately divorce. As for Jake's parents, they've been quiet since finding out about our separation. I suspect Jake hasn't been entirely honest with them about the circumstances, but that's his problem to manage now, not mine. Thank you all for being part of this journey. Your comments and support helped me recognize the manipulation tactics and gave me the courage to stand firm when it mattered most. I've learned so much about myself through this process, most importantly that I'm capable of handling whatever comes next. Final edit before I go to bed. Jake just texted asking if we could put this all behind us if he agrees to support my career. Too little, too late, buddy. Some trust, once broken, can't be repaired with just words. I'll be taking things one day at a time, but my focus is on building a stable, healthy future for myself and my children, with or without him. As this story about reclaiming my independence ends, a new chapter of my life begins. Thank you all for being there when I needed clarity and support the most.